Welcome to Be Well. I'm your host, Dr. Candace Norcott, and I'm so glad you're here. Each week, we explore a topic that affects your mental well-being and the well-being of your community. We start by breaking down the issue and why it matters in your everyday life. Then, I'm joined by a guest, or sometimes guests, who help us take a deeper dive. In this deep dive segment, you'll hear from people doing powerful, meaningful work that impacts our collective wellness. Together, we'll reframe the issue in a way that helps us grow, shift our perspective, and move towards thriving. And before we wrap up, I'll leave you with some tips and strategies you can use in your everyday life. Tools that are rooted in the strategies that I often use in my own practice. Remember, Be Well is not a replacement for your own therapy. However, I hope it can help and be a place where you can feel more prepared when your own therapist asks, where would you like to begin? Let's get started. For a long time, changing careers was seen as a last resort, something people did only when they had no other choice after years of feeling stuck. But today, more people of all ages are making career moves, not just out of desperation, but because their mental and emotional well-being matters to them. More than ever, we seem to have a workforce that across ages and genders, they are considering their life satisfaction as much as their salary. Work plays a huge role in our identity, in our purpose, and our self-worth. And when a job drains us, it can begin to feel like no amount of money can make up for the stress, burnout, or feeling like we're just going through the motions. But making a change can be deeply emotional. Fear of failure, financial insecurity, and even the pressure to be a boss can make even considering the leap feel overwhelming. So today, we're digging into the emotional side of career pivots. How do you know when it's time to move on? How do you work through the doubts, the fear, and the uncertainty? And most importantly, how do you make a change that supports your mental health and well-being? Today, we've got real stories from someone who's done it. Her expert insights and practical strategies will help you navigate the emotional roller coaster of career transitions. If you've ever felt stuck in a job that's no longer serving you, if you've ever wondered whether chasing something new is worth the risk, or if you're in the middle of a transition and just need some reassurance, this episode is for you. So take a deep breath. And on the other side of the break, I'll be joined by my good friend and colleague, author and coach, Katrina McGhee, for our deep dive. Stay with us.
So on Memorial Day, 1978, an intruder came into our home. There was never a moment where it was black and white for me. It was a bad dude. And unfortunately, people reacted badly. And that's when my mom started to get threatening letters at the Defender and at home saying she was a race traitor. And this is what your family gets.
In each episode's deep dive segment, we slow things down and take a thoughtful look at a specific issue or challenge, with an eye toward reframing how we understand it and shifting your perspective. Whether that's in your own day-to-day life or in how you relate to someone else's story, the goal is connection and clarity. To help me with today's deep dive into our topic that I've called the art of the pivot is our resident artist, my friend Katrina McGhee. Katrina, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh my gosh, Candace, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, when I thought about just this idea of people pivoting just in their lives, you absolutely came to mind for so many reasons. And where I kind of want to start the conversation is you are a coach, someone that coaches people when they're interested in changing their career and are taking a break and kind of maybe a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. What causes people to come to you for those reasons? Like what causes people to kind of be needing that kind of shift in their life?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you know it's super unconventional to do it. And so there's a lot of stigma and resistance people have to honoring that need or that desire to take time out from work, right? Just the idea it can literally send someone into like a panic attack, right? Just sort of getting very worked up. So essentially when somebody knows that they want it, but they have no idea how to make it happen, they will reach out to me to either A, work on the mindset around it, like, can I really take a break? I need to think through this more. I need to understand, like what's really at stake and how I'm going to make this happen. But also people want to plan. It's leaping into uncertainty for sure, especially if you're taking a true career break and not a sabbatical where you're going to come back to the company in a few months. And that can be really triggering, and people want to have a plan. They want to know, how can I re-enter and come back and smoothly transition? How can I find a job when it's over? How can I make sure that this time really feels worthwhile and that I'm maximizing the benefit if I do decide to take a break? And so, from considering it all the way through to re-entry, I'm there as a coach to support people and making it through the steps, both concrete and more of that mindset overlay that really helps them approach it in the right way and feel good when they're doing it.
And even before they're considering it, what are some of the things that you hear that people talk about happening to them that leads them to considering it? Like what do they experience in their bodies, in their work life, in their relationships?
Yeah, I like to call it the 3 Bs, but essentially there are 3 primary motivators that bring people to the point of wanting a break. The first one, burnout. No, we're no stranger to burnout, right? We're always on, we're always connected, we're doing more with less. It's just a really exhausting and unsustainable way to be living our lives. So, sometimes it's a mental burnout, like I'm fatigued, I'm not able to be effective in my job, I'm, snapping and crashing out at home. Like there's just sort of all the ways that it's impacting you and the people that love you. But it might also be a physical toll. So at that stage, right, you're like, time out. I just can't continue the way I've been going. I need a timeout. The second B is betrayal. And that is really when you have this misalignment with how you're showing up in your life with your values. So you might be working somewhere where you feel like, I say that I value certain things, but this work does not feel good to me. Like I value feeling fulfilled in my work, and like I feel this building sense of I'm not where I'm supposed to be. It might also look like I say I'm a person who values my health, but I'm working at a job where I get to have 0 boundaries, right? But there's some huge misalignment in how you're living your life and what you really feel like you think you value and like how it's actually showing up. And the third one is blossom. And this is for the people who really desire to blossom in other areas beyond just work, right? Beyond focusing on making money. So you think about connecting with people that you care about, reflecting on your own, like your own journey, having interest, having hobbies, wanting to maybe pursue, finding your person in life and your romantic partner, like whatever it is. There are many other aspects of our life that we neglect or sacrifice in that pursuit of climbing the ladder and making our career work and becoming successful. And so it's a desire to really blossom and focus on and pour into these other parts of our life. And I will say that you can absolutely have more than one. I actually, in my own journey, had all 3 present, but for sure you can have more than one. But those are the primary motivators that create that thought for someone like, I might need to be doing this. Like I need to figure out how I can take a step back because this is just not sustainable, or there's something I'm really longing to do that I just can't find the time to do when I'm on the rat race, like grinding it out on the hamster wheel,
And before a change, sometimes it's really hard to see those things. I think after shifts, like I think I've heard people talk about like my eyebrows grew back, or like I got my edges back because I didn't realize how stressed I was and I was losing my hair. And so I think sometimes we really underestimate how the physical things that are happening in our body could be impacted by really the need to make a shift like this. So those B's resonated deeply. I mean, my edges too, but I must say, but no, absolutely. And the values piece also comes up a lot, I think, in my therapy work. There's all types of therapies, strategies that talk about values. One is acceptance and commitment therapy. And they talk about you're kind of feeling out of sorts when you're misaligned and you're not living in alignment with your values. And so I'm a psychologist, you're a coach. But I remember when we met, I was like, oh, I got to talk to you more. right? And we talked a lot about values. Can you just kind of share a little bit about what you feel like the coach brings to helping people through this shift? And I'd love to be in conversation about just the differences between and how coaches and therapists work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great question, and one that I think a lot of people are curious about. At a high level, my work as a coach is to help you achieve your goals, right? So to do that, sometimes I need some context as to what has happened, what brought you to this point. But a lot of our time together is really going to be focused on what is stopping you today from being the person you want to be, or having the thing you want to have, or even being brave enough to actually go try to get that thing, right? And then creating a plan for success. So breaking it down into baby steps so that you can make progress towards creating whatever it is that you want to create in your life. And I think with therapy, which I have had therapists, and love them, and think that they bring so much value, sometimes it's a lot about understanding who I am and sort of looking to the past to understand how I got here so that I can find a new way to move forward. I definitely think there's a Venn diagram where there's a big intersection, and it depends on what kind of coach you are, and what kind of therapy you're practicing. But in general, I feel like coaching is very forward focused most often, and it's really goal oriented in creating that. And so for me, that looks like you want to take a break or you want to make a change in your life. Let's figure out why you're stuck here. And then as soon as we figure that out, let's create steps to get you unstuck.
Yeah, and so I always say you shouldn't go to a psychologist or a therapist that wouldn't go to therapy. So I've been in therapy and I've had an amazing coach, right? I've had an amazing coach. And really, I think you described it perfectly. I mean, I think when you want to understand kind of the seeds that have been planted, the messages you've received, and really unearth some of those who am I questions and how did I get here in a deep kind of introspective way, therapy can be that place. And then, when you come with, this is where I want to go, help me get there, give me the steps, help me identify the steps, again, with that future focus, coaching can be a nice overlay. And I think coaching and therapy can exist together.
Oh, absolutely. I would say about a third of my clients are working with a therapist when we do coaching, and they've probably been with that therapist for 1 year, many years, but there's a lot of overlap in what we do and how we can really support that person. And it's funny because a lot of times, as a coach, I'm always giving homework. And so a lot of times my clients will reflect back to me oh, my coach loved that homework you gave me. And we talked about it in my session. And so I think there's, a nice interplay a lot of times between coaching and therapy.
Well, absolutely. And the themes, I think, I had a mentor that said, nothing's new. We're just kind of repackaging, and which is very freeing, I think, when you're trying to do something. But I think it's just kind of the intention and the specific work that you're doing. But I do think that when working in concert, I think a therapy and coaching can be so valuable. But I just wanted to kind of, have a discussion about that, because I think sometimes that question comes up, what's the difference and what are the nuances there? So, when we think about taking a break, right, I can just hear the doubtful questions of I don't have that kind of income, I've got bills to pay. And, how do you meet that kind of resistance as it shows up? And it's very real, right? There are very real financial stressors that people have.
Yeah.
But, how do you kind of work with that and maybe even talk to somebody and say, maybe this isn't right for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first we want to know the truth. We want to find the facts, right? When I took my break, people thought I had a trust fund when they met me while I was traveling around the world, right? Oh, you must be rich to be, at the time I was about 32, not working and just taking a year off, right? Ended up becoming almost 2 years, but a year off. But it's really limited thinking. I had a lot of debt, for example, when I decided I wanted to take a break. I had about $60,000 in business school student loans, right? Getting my MBA was great, but it came with a hefty price tag. And then, I also was living at my means, so I wasn't going into debt beyond that, but I was spending most of the money I was making every month and pretty much breaking even, at the end of the year. And so when I wanted to take a break, I had $1,500 in my bank account. I had $60,000 worth of debt. And I also had a townhouse in Atlanta that I had owned and rented out that, because of the market, was just breaking even and sometimes costing me money every month. On paper, no reason that I ever should have thought I can afford a break. But I tell this to my clients, and this is what I love to like work with them on, being resourceful. We're so freaking resourceful for our kids, for people we love, for our jobs or our careers. We'll find a way. We will give us like 2 sticks, you know, and a rubber band, and we'll MacGyver our way through a solution for other people or other entities, but not always for ourselves and our dreams. And so I turned that focus inward and became really resourceful and creative on like, how do I make this math and figure it out? Now, it took me 18 months of saving, trying things, you know, having a lot of inner sort of like reflection on like, how did I get to this place where I'm not saving any money? But I saved $40,000 in 18 months and I was able to take the break, right? So I work with people who interestingly will say to me, I don't think I can afford a break. And when we look at the numbers, Candace, they can actually afford a break. The question is not, where does the money come from? It's, can I give myself permission to spend it in this way? Because that's irresponsible, right? Like, I don't want to not have an income. And then if I'm going to not have an income, I don't want to be spending money to just be on a break. What would I do on a break, right? And so there's so much more around that conversation around money. For sure, like myself, some people don't have access to that money right away. Get creative, right? Does your break have to look like my break where I spent $40,000? No. Maybe you're staying at home and you're, you know, doing an online class and going to yoga and walking every day and eating better and just like recovering from your burnout. Like your break doesn't have to be as long as my break. It doesn't have to look like my break. I have clients that have taken breaks that are 3 months long. I have clients that have taken breaks that are 15 months long, right? You can find your own way. But let's look for the facts. Let's figure out how much money do I actually make and how much do I save. Let's look at, you know, what is my actual resume? How much experience do I have? Do I have a solid network? If I wanted to take a break, is it true that I would never, ever, for the next 40 years, find another job? The answer is no, right? But like it feels like the answer is yes when you're talking to fear. So I think it's really important to look at the facts, put down on paper what your doubts are, or talk to a coach or talk to somebody that has done it before, that has done the thing you want to do, and just really see that through a more unbiased filter that's not so heavily based in fear.
Absolutely. And, you know, emotion and finances. I mean, that's a whole nother show.
Yeah,
right?
for real.
And, you know, just the idea that some people just, and by some people, I may or may not be talking about myself. No, it's so emotional and stressful to think about actually looking at and accounting for how you're spending. But, you know, you talk in your book about the freedom of that. And so, you know, I just kind of casually dropped that you wrote a book, which I'm so impressed by. But can you share a little bit about like what got you to the place and what you really wanted to make sure people had in this book as a resource?
Yeah. Oh, writing this book was the hardest thing I have ever done in my professional life. It's a dummies book. It's a reference book. It is an intense process that only ties with taking the first 4 actuarial exams, which was also incredibly hard. But when I thought about writing this book, so the publisher came to me, and when they asked me to write this book, I thought about the people who won't get the chance to work with me one-on-one. And I thought about the people who had a lot of doubt about doing this, but really, really needed to take a break. And I said, can I write a book that's going to help motivate people and give them a path to actually make this happen, so they don't necessarily need me or someone else to hold their hand through the whole process. They can make it happen. And I poured literally everything I had. I think I was like channeling things that I didn't even know I knew in my brain when I was writing this book. And it just all came out in a way that goes step by step, from considering all the way to thinking about a second career break at the end, right? Kind of going
Can
full
people
circle.
do that? Can people take
yes!
2 career breaks?
Yes, Candace, I know, right? This one, I know, it felt like the best place to end it is like, not only can you do one, but you can do more than one. And I'll offer that, you know, I have clients who before their first break is over will say to me, I'm doing this again. Like coming back around, I'm doing this again. And I think the way we're headed with work, what's demanded of us, the way that we live our lives, taking breaks, whether they're short ones, long ones, taking intentional breaks is just going to have to become a way that we integrate work and life so that we can have happy lives and nourishing lives and really enhance and address like our well-being.
And how do you see that as kind of an emerging kind of philosophy? Like what has shifted that, you know, where more and more people are saying like, oh, like this is actually something that I want, or that can be available to me?
Yeah, well, first of all, more people are taking breaks. So the Great Resignation happened, right? And a lot of people like quit and they were, I'm done. I need a break. I can't do this anymore. And I have found, like, I've been doing this coaching and helping people take breaks for over 8 years at this point. I've supported over 100 breaks. Like, I've seen a lot of different breaks over a long period of time. And what I've noticed is one of the most powerful indicators and support systems that you can have for taking a break is knowing a real person who did it. And so there's this amplifying effect that when a wave of people, right, have taken these breaks and they've come back, they haven't died, they didn't end up homeless, like, nothing like catastrophic happened to them. And in fact, they were better off for it and they felt re-energized. And a lot of people, especially if they were intentional and strategic breaks, were like, yeah, that was life-changing. Other people see those people as living, breathing examples. And so it's no longer this fictional, crazy idea, but it's like, I know, like, Tiffany did that thing. And it's like, wow, it changed her life. And it suddenly makes it easier to give yourself permission or to even consider the idea. So I think there's a momentum building just, purely from that sort of like first initial Great Resignation wave. But then also, Gen Z is coming into the workforce and they are demanding sort of a better work-life balance from the get-go. They're not, the reality that I had as a Gen Xer is not the reality that they're going to have. And the promises that were honestly broken, they were not kept, right? But the promises we were given, they didn't hold. And I think Gen Z just knows that. But I also see people like millennials, Gen X like myself, who are at this inflection point midlife and saying, wow, I survived that first half. And when I look inside, I ain't got whatever it takes, nor do I want to relive that for the second half. Something has to change. I'm going to break if it doesn't. And I think that inflection point is making people consider it. And then you have all this momentum building where people are talking about it. Harvard Business Review launched 4 articles this year about the value of taking a break and taking a sabbatical. Bank of America offered a sabbatical, I believe it was last year. And within like 6 months, 5,000 employees had taken advantage of it. We have Simone Biles showing us what a sabbatical from something, even when you're at the top of your game, you will still benefit from taking a step back to address
what a great example.
Your well-being and invest it in your joy, and then come back to the thing that you love and the thing that you want to do and do it better than you've done it before in a way that you enjoy it on your terms.
Can we shout that to the industries in the back of the room that like have not yet come on board with the need for sabbaticals or the offering sabbaticals? As I knew it would, this conversation went by super fast. I'm very excited for people to have access to your book. Hopefully, we're going to put how people can find you as well, and on our show page. And also, you've kind of green-lighted a couple strategies that I'll share on the other side of the break, kind of from some of your recommendations. So, just thank you so much for joining me. And it's not just because we're twinning. It's just this was a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Candace. I appreciate you.
On the other side of a short break, we'll close out the episode with a segment we call the closing session. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm financial educator Tamara Durbin. On the next episode of In the Money, we'll talk about pathways to building wealth with my guest, real estate investor James Morris, and entrepreneur and attorney Mashawn Studley. Join the conversation exclusively on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN-TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
As we wrap up today's show, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned about the power of taking a break. For a lot of us, the idea of stepping away from work or thinking about our daily responsibilities can feel overwhelming, maybe even impossible. There's fear of judgment, financial concerns, or just the uncertainty of what comes next. But as my guest, Katrina McGhee, reminded us today, taking a break isn't a luxury. It can be an investment in your mental and emotional well-being. If today's conversation resonated with you, here are some steps Katrina suggests to help you move forward. Clarify your purpose. Take some time to craft a personal purpose statement for your break. Something like, I want to invest in my well-being and rediscover what brings me joy. This will help keep you grounded and help you push past procrastination. Identify your themes. Choose 3 to 4 key themes to guide your time off. Maybe it's restoration, learning, or connection. Having a clear focus will help you make the most of your break and create an experience that truly benefits you. Reframe financial concerns. Instead of seeing a break as an expense, look at it as an investment. Take an honest look at your finances and start thinking about small changes you can make now to keep and create space for this in the future. Tackle fear of judgment. If you're worried about what people might think, challenge yourself to redefine success. Prioritizing your well-being isn't irresponsible. It's one of the smartest things you can do for yourself. Find your support system. Whether it's a therapist, a coach, or a community of like-minded people, surround yourself with those who will encourage you along the way. Having support can make all the difference. And finally, celebrate where you are. Before you even take a break, take a moment to appreciate how far you've come. Acknowledge your hard work, your resilience, and the fact that you're even considering prioritizing yourself in this way. That's huge. In the coming weeks, I encourage you to check in with yourself. What would taking a break look like for you? How could it support your emotional well-being? Remember, honoring yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And when you give yourself the space to rest, reset, and reflect, you open the door to something even greater. Thank you for being part of this conversation today. That's our time for this week. Thank you for taking the time to invest in yourself and joining us for this episode of Be Well. If anything resonated with you today, or if you're looking for any resources that we discussed in the episode, the conversation doesn't have to end here. Message us at bewell@cantv.org and at Dr. Norcott on Instagram, or join me on our show page at cantv.org. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a topic that matters. Until then, take care, stay curious, and be well together.